Let me,
You said that wasn't the rule.
let me ask a related question that we also have, because it touches upon many of the same topics, and allow each of you to elaborate, but get a little more specific about a couple projects. So, in July, City Council voted 6-4 against the creation of a historic district in the Germantown neighborhood, which is just to the south of where we sit here. And then City Council voted in favor of the Heritage Row apartment development, but did not have a supermajority vote that was required to actually approve it. So what we have now is the City Place project, which would result in the demolition of century-old homes in that area. But that particular project meets the city's basic requirements, and council felt compelled to approve it. So I would, Newcombe, beginning with you, ask, and I understand that your answer will have to be slightly different because of your, your interest in this issue. But how would you have voted on the proposal for historic district? And how would you have voted on the Heritage Row project? Would you see that as preferable or not to the City Place, or what's on the table now?
Sure. Well, for clarification point, I think because it is a question that will probably come up again and again, my interests in both the City Place / Heritage Row development and the Moravian is that of my professional capacity. I was the broker. I brought together the development teams, the financing, and the property owners. As such, in both developments, my role, for the most part, has been completed. My fee is now fixed, and while I'm guessing it wouldn't be too appropriate for me to vote for those projects as a council member, the outcome of those projects, be them the by right developments or a negotiated PUD, do not affect my direct compensation. They do, however, affect my interest in getting more people living in the downtown area. And one would hope that we do it in a way that's sensitive to both the neighborhoods and to the master plans that are on the book and to the city's needs at large. And when you have two projects that were approved by planning staff, approved by planning commission, and approved by the majority of council members, you have to wonder what is it that caused those that chose to vote against the projects, what their motivations are. And there have been some of the council members that have been very clear in their rationale for voting against the projects and have worked to move forward to the what next point, especially with City Place and Heritage Row, and there are others that have refused to engage in the conversation. I frankly would not like to see City Place built. However, it is within our right. It is within the right of anybody. There's an approved project there. And it's a saleable development or it's a constructible development. And I think the fact that there is an option on the table to save, restore, and protect those houses, it should be considered. And right now, given the prism of the season, it appears that it won't be, at least not until John and I are through with our campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Very much favor the historic district, and I very much favor the expanded version of the historic district some we're talking about. I think those neighborhoods and the area around the Heritage Row area, those are what give us our distinctive sense of time and place. And I think it would be an enormous mistake, shooting ourselves in the foot, to tear those down. I think in the case of Heritage Row, I've toured the homes with both Mr. DePerry, the principal developer, and with a member of the historic district. And I think what Mr. DePerry proposes to do with those 7 homes is a gift to the city. He proposes to put many on new foundations, to rewire and replumb, to remove many non-attractive and non-historic additions and fire escapes placed upon them, and to put in sprinklers to make them more fire safe. I think that is a gift to the city. I understand, I've sat on Tom Whittington's front porch, Whitaker's, excuse me, Tom Whitaker's front porch, who lives across the street and has been unhappy with this, and I understand why he doesn't want a 2-lane garage opening on 5th Street down the street from his house. I'd like to think there's some way we can work around that. I recognize that what Mr. DePere proposes to do with those 7 homes is probably not economically viable unless he's allowed to build something on the back of the lots. I want to imagine there's some way we can allow him to do what he wants to do with the houses in front and to build something on the back that will work for everyone involved.
Okay, thank you. John, we will move on, and I will address this question to you. How were the Stadium Boulevard bridges allowed to get into the deteriorated condition we find them in today, and what can the city do to fix them?
How they got into it was that they weren't maintained, and we didn't start applying for repair funds until it was a little late in the game to do that. I'm sorry, the second part of your question?
Yeah, it was just, what do we do now?
Well, we've applied for federal funds and we've applied for state funds, and we've been turned down both times. In April, the Assistant Secretary of Transportation came to Ann Arbor and viewed the bridge and said that we were unlikely to be funded on it in the next round of federal grant funding. I believe he said that there would be 25 bridges in America funded out of this next round of funding. And he suggested we not put all of our eggs in that basket. If we can't get the bridge repaired using other people's money, which I'd love to do, we may have to bite the bullet and issue bonds to repair this or use our street repair fund to do it. I'm not happy with either option. I'd much rather have federal or state funding for this, but I think it's imperative we get the bridge repaired. We can't run fire trucks over it. There's only 1 lane each way. It's a major thoroughfare, and it is unsightly. And a lot of people come look at that as they go to Michigan football games. If we want our town to look like a place that's not on the ropes, a bridge that's that important for our transportation and that physically visible, it needs to be repaired.
Well, I'd much rather have the state or federal government pay my business school tuition, but I'm not waiting for it. And this speaks to just the common sense. If you own anything, if you have a house with a roof, it's going to get old. It needs to be replaced. And you can do the proper thing, the common sense thing, and put a little bit away each month, and then when the roof come due, you'll have the money sit in the bank. Or you'll reach that point where you're going to have to come up with the money. Well, we're at that point with coming up with the money, as we're going to be with quite a bit of our infrastructure. Many of the pipes that are out of sight are certainly not out of mind. And what we've been finding as we dig up the street for the new deck is pretty concerning. And unfortunately, the city doesn't have the best track record in being responsible with their roofs and with their foundations. And I would hope, as we're reviewing the budget, we may have to look at it and say, you know what, we've owned dams, we own bridges, and we're not socking enough away each year to be prudent and responsible. It's common sense, and it should be done. We're going to have to fix it, and we're either going to have to use our own money or we're going to have to borrow it. And let's just hope we don't do this again. I would automatically propose a full audit of all of our infrastructure right now, much like we do at the DDA, much like we review every quarter. And when you do it, you catch the problems early, and you repair when it's appropriate, and in the end, you get a much longer useful life out of your assets. And that's what I would hope to bring to City Council.
Okay, thank you. Newcombe, we'll direct the next question to you first. The Ann Arbor Planning Commission has approved a proposed ordinance that would regulate medical marijuana dispensaries. That proposed ordinance will now go to City Council. Do you support it in its current form?
I know that everyone is struggling to figure out the grayness of the laws as they stand right now. I'm very compassionate and supportive of all those that have their legal rights to this medication and this treatment. I don't quite understand the worry about legal businesses coming into town. However, as many landlords have pointed out, we get phone calls all the time for these compassion centers. The legality is still very gray. So I am very much supportive of something being cleaned up, something become a little bit more clear. So both the landlords, the citizens, and those that are licensed and registered to give this service understand their playing field. And as I see the current ordinance coming through right now, it's an uneven playing field. It's diving into a muddy lake not knowing how deep it's going to be. And I think in any area of government, be it those that just affect our fiscal policy or our life, you don't want to make investments and dive into the water unless you know how deep it runs.
Okay.
This is one of those issues on which I struggle to find a way to disagree with Mr. Clark. I think he's been hit on the nail on this. We need to have some clear way to allow these industries to be in the city. And I understand the impulse to not have one on every street corner because in addition to people who need marijuana really for medical purposes, there appears to be in other places in California a way to become eligible for receiving marijuana without necessarily having an obvious physical need for it. And I understand people don't want these to become simply ways that people can get drugs who aren't using it for truly medicinal purposes. But we, by state law, have to have some place where this is done, and there are people who do need these, and we need to accommodate them.